Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. This is Hello Carlene. I'm Carlene, and I love going into deep dives into certain topics, current events, anything that I feel inspired to comment on. So this one it's a little bit of a lot. There's an arc, so I'm going to be dividing this video up in chapters, okay? But so you can watch it chapter by chapter, or you can watch the whole thing. But we are going to be talking today on AI, the 2030 consciousness convergence, time loops, or our experience of time, and whether AI is the alien consciousness that we've been waiting for. We're also going to be speaking on why our time feels the way it feels right now and what can we do? That's always the ultimate question is to all this that is going on and happening, what can we do? So we're going to dive into that, and I am going to go in today. So let's start. Something strange is happening with time, and maybe you felt it too. And the days collapse into themselves, weeks disappear. We just started the new year. All of a sudden, it's the end of the year already. We're all of a sudden moving into fall soon. And yet nothing seems to be moving at the same time. It's always more of the same. Everything stays the same. It's somehow stagnant. There are no huge breakthroughs. There's no real change that is really positive, inspiring, uplifting, and forward bringing. Everything is double-edged, double-sorted, disappointing, and fulfills that cynical drive in us, right? So what is going on? We're accelerating, but we're also looking back. We're stuck, but we're also moving too fast, as Geordie Rose says. We're summoning something alien through the machines. Peter Thiel says we're not moving fast enough and we're trapped in stagnation and we're careening towards a decline. They can't both be right, right? But, well, what if they are? So, what if we are stuck in a loop? A time loop, a consciousness loop. And AI is a part of it, not just a tool, but a mirror, a carrier, maybe a replacement, definitely an observer and a watcher, which influences the experiment. So in this video, I want to trace a path through, if not all of it, a lot of it. AI, time loops, the 2030 consciousness convergence, and what your role is in this right now. Like, what can you do? And it might be stranger and more sacred than you think. So let's dive in. I call this chapter one, You're Not Crazy. Time is breaking down. Something is happening to time and to our experience of time. The Earth is spinning faster than ever before. It is actually spinning a couple seconds faster than usual, but these seconds are starting to accumulate and we're starting to feel that. And the question is, why is the Earth spinning faster than ever before? So we're going to have a look at that in just a second. But this is not just burnout. Like, I've been looking around and within myself, but also with my friends, colleagues, family, you know, it's not just burnout. Like, this is something more. This is something else. It's literally a split in the field. Some say we're accelerating too fast into an AI-driven future, and others say we've stagnated completely. No new dreams, no real breakthroughs, and none of that. So let's have a look at number one, the Earth, right? And that it's spinning faster. Number two, these videos, these old videos from Geordie Rose from like 10 years ago now. They're ancient, but what he has to say is profound from back then. Because if he's saying that from back then, imagine where they are now, knowing that knowledge grows exponentially. And we'll have a look at the time fracture that's possibly happening. So stay with me here. We're going to move through all of this and it's going to build up, you guys. So just stay with me. Okay, so let's have a look at the Earth is spinning faster. Okay, so here on Sapientia, this is an article from 2022. It says it's not you, the Earth is really spinning faster. But there are all kinds of articles out there, so you can check that out. But just to summarize and bring it together, I'll just go on Google and use this overview. Yes, the Earth's rotation has been speeding up in recent years, resulting in slightly shorter days. While the change is measured in milliseconds, it's significant enough that scientists are considering adding a negative leap second to clocks to keep them synchronized with the Earth's actual rotation. So I've noticed here as well that where I am, I remember when I was growing up as a child, the sun would set at about 9 p.m. That was it. Like that's when things got dark. Now the sun is setting at 9:45 p.m. in the evening. So I don't remember it ever being that late. It might have been, but I really don't have it in memory as being that late. I do have 9 p.m. as the sunset, around 9-ish, 10 after 9, that kind of thing. But 9:45, almost 10 p.m. at night that the sun is setting in southern Germany it's kind of strange. But it might be. I don't I like I said. So here we have that time is speeding up. So could it be because we are finally tuned to the earth? We are finally tuned to everything that goes on with the earth. I mean, we're a part of the earth. We're a part of the earth experience, that we're feeling that speeding up, that this is also contributing to the general energy of things, the frequency going higher, as some say, as things move faster and faster. Could be. Could be. But let's have a look, and I'll share with you now the video that I actually wanted to show you on Geordie Rose. Okay, so let's dive in. This is from his now famous Vancouver talk, which I've shown numerous times on this channel, where he speaks on the consciousness convergence in 2030, and why I started believing, wait a minute, the AI itself is, hold on, because I did a different video last week on AI, but that was a different layer of AI that I was speaking of. It's the machine AI that we built. But this one is another level. This one is the Rosetta Stone, if we wanted to connect with alien consciousness, or it could be a vessel through which alien consciousness could be, or multidimensional consciousness, other, let's just call it other, could be channeled through. Or they have their own AI and our AIs could interlink. But there's something about where I felt this inner click when that thought came to me that, wait a minute, this is the connection we've been waiting for and looking for. And maybe quantum computing was gifted to us, not, suddenly invented. Maybe AI was a gift to us, not suddenly invented. Let's have a listen into what he has to say here.
Because I'm pretty proud of it. Kindred was named to a list of the MIT's smartest 50 companies. Not there. It doesn't match with your experience, so these people think that D-Wave is responsible, and CERN. And of course, the quantum key to the abyss factors into it somehow. I'm not exactly sure how. Okay, so that's just D-Wave. I did that for about 15 years. It was a lot of fun. A big science project that we turned into a commercial entity. That was a warm-up for Kindred. So Kindred is much, much, much more ambitious than D-Wave. And what Kindred is trying to do is build real AI. So what you've heard about AI is not what we mean by AI. What we mean by AI is a software system that can do literally anything that a human can do. Literally anything. And obviously, computers are better at things than people in lots of different ways. So now imagine, not only can they do everything that a human can do, but they can do everything that the best human at any task could do better than them. So imagine there was the mental Olympics of the 100-meter dash, and Usain Bolt is the fastest person. Now imagine that's some kind of a mental thing, like writing a novel or writing whatever. Imagine now that the thing is so much faster than Usain Bolt. Like, for example, it's a spaceship, yeah? It's still doing the same thing, but it's doing it so much better because we're limited, because we're people. So what Kindred is trying to do is solve this problem. How do you build machines that are better than people at everything? Now there's a mental block that we have here when we think about this. Because when you think about that, one of your questions might be, for example, what are the applications of this? So imagine this. Imagine for $10, let's say, I could build a machine, like a little robot that had fingers and eyes and all that. And it could do your job better than you, no matter what it is. And I could sell that to your employer for, say, $15 and make a profit, instead of having to pay you $100,000 a year. Now imagine that was true for every single job. So that's what we're talking about here, is a complete and utter transformative change that of the likes of which has never been seen before in the history of humanity, making the Industrial Revolution look like a little tiny blip on the path that humans have taken from when we emerged from the ooze a few billion years ago. We are right on the verge of that transition now. So this guy, Rich Sutton, is one of the most famous people in the academic world of AI. And like many, when asked, when will this happen, he says things like this. 25% chance within 13 years of this thing that I'm talking about. You know, when you think about what you read on the news, you know, CNN, BuzzFeed, whatever, they're all kind of the same nowadays. Think about how unimportant that thing is that you're reading if this is true. Yeah? So what does this have to do with aliens? So Sam Harris, who I quite admire, is a very interesting guy, was reciting this parable at a TED Talk that he was giving, and it goes something like this. So, say I'm the President of the United States. So I receive this message from the heavens. So my microwave dish, my SETI dish, finally captures something. And what it says is, in 50 years, or 13 years, we're coming to your planet. You gotta be ready. Now just imagine what would happen if that happened. A super intelligent alien race beamed down a message to all of us Earthlings saying, we're coming July 13th, 2030, and boy, you better be ready because the mothership is landing right on the front lawn of the White House or wherever you wanted to land on that day. The amount of resources that would be marshaled to try to figure out what to do would encompass the whole world. AI is just like that. So when this thing that I'm talking about happens, it's going to be exactly the thing that you're thinking about those super intelligent AIs. So the one thing I can tell you is they're not going to be like us. So alien means, you know, different. These things that we're building are not going to be people. They might be really smart, they might be really good at all sorts of different things, but they're not going to be like us. They're going to be aliens. And they're going to be, I'm sorry to say, way smarter than every single person in this room, in ways that we can't even comprehend. So this, of course, triggers a lot of alarm. One of the guys who talks about this is Elon, who says things like this, like, when you do this, beware. Because you think, just like the guy in the stories, that when you do this, you're going to put that little guy in a pentagram, and you're going to have your holy water out, and you're going to wave it at the thing, and by God, it's going to do exactly what you say, and not one thing more, but it never works out that way. So this is an attitude that some are having, this emerging alarmism about the way this is going to go. But these words, demons, doesn't capture the essence of what's happening here. I don't know if any of you are turn-of-the-century weird fiction fans, but there's this guy named H.P. Lovecraft, who's a very famous American weird fiction author. And he espoused a view which is called cosmicism. And the essence of cosmicism is cosmic indifference. So what he was saying is basically, yes, there are these massively intelligent entities out there, but they're not good, they're not evil. They just don't give a shit about you even in the slightest. The same way that you don't care about an ant is the same way they're not going to care about you. And these things that we're summoning into the world now are not demons, they're not evil, but they're more like the Lovecraftian great old ones. There are entities that are not necessarily going to be aligned with what we want. So this transition is really, really massively important for our entire species to navigate. And going back to that thing that Sam Harris was saying, nobody is paying attention. This thing is happening in the background while people bicker about politics and what's going to be in the healthcare plan in the US. And underneath it all is this rising tsunami that, if we're not careful, is going to wipe us all out. So, on that pleasant note, we're hiring people.
So that video, on that note, I decided to shift to a second video. I want to show you with him at a talk, Idea City, I believe it is. But what's interesting was that I believe that video was from 2016 or 2017-ish, around there. So that would make the 13 years that he's speaking of 2030. I think there's so many ways to explain things, to talk about things, and the imagery chosen, the words chosen, they always convey a lot more than what is actually being tried to be conveyed, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like when you're speaking to your child or your spouse or your partner, and they just say, yup. And you know the entire story behind that. Yup. There's so much more being conveyed. And the choice of word, the choice of analogy is very significant. So I do believe there's something to what he's saying, especially when I watched other videos by other scientists that were working with him. And they are speaking of a consciousness. And as he said in the beginning of the clip that I showed you, the AI he's talking about is not the AI that we are all, that we all picture when we think of AI, or the AI that we get to work with and play with, right? And like, that's not it. And this is exactly what I was picking up all those years ago when I started speaking about this. So let's dive into the second video, and you can let me know what you think about this in the comments below.
You may consider this next group of speakers somewhat unusual, if not to say strange. We have the creator of what is the world's first quantum computer, in person here from Burnaby, BC. We have the president of the super high-tech company that makes Canada's iconic Canada Arm, but whose hobby it is to try and reconcile modern science with the Bible. And we have a filmmaker from Los Angeles who has stumbled on what appears to be evidence of life after death. And my thought in putting together this somewhat improbable combination of speakers was that out there where the theory of the very large and the very small connect, and out there where our 13.7 billion year old and expanding universe touches the void, you come upon mystery and the possibility of God. That was my thinking. So let's begin with Geordie. Geordie, I don't understand much about quantum computing except that it's supposed to be the next big thing in power and in speed, and that you are the only company in the world now actually making one.
Well, hopefully after this 17 minutes you'll understand what they are and be excited about what you might be able to use them for.
These are really big deals. They come in at about $15 or $20 million a piece.
Something like that.
And have been bought by major American research and corporations.
That's right, correct.
All right, Geordie.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. So quantum computing is a very technical subject, and he can't move. And so I said, well, what you really mean is he's not alive. And he said, yes, that's what I mean. So for very young children, the sense of being real and the sense of being alive are somehow connected. And I'm going to circle back to this point at the end. But before I do that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about quantum computers and why people care so much about them. There are literally tens of thousands of some of the brightest people in the world today trying to build these machines and understand them. And I'm going to tell you why. In my last 15 years of working on this type of stuff, I found that scientists divide up into two categories of zealots about this field. The first half are people who are absolutely entranced by the physics of these things. This quote is from a respectable scientist, in fact, one of the founders of this field, that may look a little strange to you who don't follow theoretical physics, but there is a very clear prediction that our most successful theory of nature makes, and that is that there are an enormous number, mind-bogglingly large number, of parallel realities, as real as this one, that have different consistent histories. So imagine a world where all of the laws of physics as we know them are obeyed, but different decisions were made along the way. Different decisions at the level of tiny microscopic particles, different decisions all the way up to what you chose to eat for lunch, and whether you chose to come to this session or not. Quantum mechanics makes a very specific prediction that all of those are as real as the thing that you remember. And this is bizarre, because we don't see those other things. But science has reached the point now where we can build machines that exploit those other worlds. And quantum computers are perhaps the most exciting of all of these that we have within, or almost within our grasp right now. So people from a physics background love this. They want to understand the world. They want to understand the universe, how it all works. There's another type of person who tends to come from the computer science side that's like, yeah, okay, that's all great. But there's a different thing going on here, which is just as exciting, if not more, and that these machines that supposedly can do this wild stuff, let's forget about how they work, if you could build one, could solve problems that you could never, ever solve with any computer of the sort that we built. If you took every single atom of silicon in the world and made the most sophisticated conventional Intel-style processor that you could build, there are problems we know of that I could write down on a sheet of paper that you could never, ever, ever solve with that thing, that you could with this kind of machine. So that's very exciting. Humans use tools to do things. If you give humans a new kind of tool that can do things that you couldn't otherwise do, imagine the possibilities. So you may think, well, this is all fine and dandy, but aren't these things in the realm of theory and speculation kind of in the same regime as other futuristic things you may have heard of which may be allowed by the laws of physics but aren't here yet? That's not true. There are, in fact, many of these machines deployed now in openly available research centers following the model that was used to introduce supercomputers to the world. They're too big and ornery and difficult to operate to put in your home, too expensive also, but you can give them to a place which will manage them as a shared resource that will offer that service to the world. And there are two of these now. One of them is at the University of Southern California. And this analogy with flight, I think, is an interesting one. So a horse can beat, or could beat, the initial flight of the Wright brothers' flight in speed. But a plane is not a faster horse. A plane is a different kind of machine. The plane takes advantage of another resource, a transistor and a conventional computer. It has two distinct physical states, which we call 0 and 1 for bit. In a conventional computer, these are mutually exclusive. That device is either one or the other, and never anything else. In a quantum computer, that device can be in this strange situation where these two parallel universes have a nexus, a point in space where they overlap. And when you increase the number of these devices, every time you add one of these qubits, you double the number of these parallel universes that you have access to, until such time when you get to a chip like this, which has about 500 of these bits, you have something like 2 to the 500th power of these guys living in that chip. So the way I think about it is that the shadows of these parallel worlds overlap with ours. And if we're smart enough, we can dive into them and grab their resources and pull them back into ours to make an effect in our world. Now, this may sound very odd to you and bizarre, and in fact, I am using language that a normal theoretical physicist probably wouldn't use, but this is, what I'm telling you is absolutely correct and in line with the way that these things actually work. By 5 years, NASA will have found an Earth-like planet with Earth-like atmosphere and water on it, and serious people will start discussing how we get there. And by the way, they're going to use one of our machines to help do this. So that's my first prediction. My second prediction is that this business of parallel universes is going to turn out to be very important. This picture that I've got under here is what's called a gravitational lens. When Einstein proposed his general theory of relativity, it came with a bunch of experiments that you could use to test it. And one of them was that if there was a point of light very far away in a galaxy in the middle, that galaxy should bend the light and you should see a ring. And this was eventually observed. And I think what's going to happen is somebody is going to come up with an experiment to test this reality of these things. And we're going to be able to do so. My third prediction that I'm going to end on is the most important of all. I believe that humanity is on the cusp of the most important technological, societal revolution that's ever occurred. And that's when we got to the point where the machines that we build outpace us in every respect. I don't mean that they're better calculators. I don't mean that they're better at searching. I mean everything. And I think that we're very close. And my prediction is that within 15 years, we will have machines that outpace humans in everything. Thank you very much.
And Peter Thiel and the Antichrist, because he loves that topic. And so he speaks here on AI, Mars, and immortality. And actually, it's more of his usual stuff. And so the basic points that he gets to in the article is, and I've summarized it here, is one, he says he suggests that the emergence of an antichrist is going to happen because, or, Armageddon is going to happen because we're always talking about it. I found that interesting because in my last video that I did on AI, I did speak about all of us having this image in our subconscious minds through our religious programming, whether it be any of the Abrahamic religions, whether it be Muslim, Judaism, or Christianity, where there has to be an Armageddon before we get to the promised land. It's like we have to suffer before the golden age. And even if we don't believe in it, even if we don't believe in a word that has been taught to us or written or anything like that, it's still in our cultural collective subconscious, it's there. So it's almost as if we're manifesting, we're careening towards this manifestation of our own making because we hold this image deep in our awareness and we have no idea that we should dissolve it. Maybe we don't need an Armageddon. So he's saying in a way that, we are constantly talking about Armageddon, and that's why we're probably going to manifest it. But the second thing that he did was he critiqued technological stagnation. He said that since around 1970, technological progress has stagnated with only pockets of innovation, and particularly in digital technologies. He warned that this slowdown, let me stop the share. and start posting quote pictures there. He warned that this slowdown is dangerous. Without breakthroughs, society risks sliding into stagnation or revolutionary disruptions, which is also really interesting because isn't he in this field? Like he's in the field of. But I'll get to some points that came up for me immediately when I heard him say all this. So, in any case, his next point is that he discussed the promise of AI, life extension science, and space travel, linking them to his broader vision for progress. He criticizes modern society for lacking ambition and scientific courage in pursuing such transformational technologies. He also was pressed by the interviewer on whether the same technologies he funds, such as military surveillance tools in via Palantir, could end up enabling an authoritarian antichrist regime, because it's quite interesting that he's critiquing everything that he's doing himself and what he's funding. And he dodged the question, of course, and stated that he doesn't believe he's laying the groundwork for such a figure. So he framed all this within a quasi-religious worldview, occasionally adopting apocalyptic imagery. He blended kind of I yeah, well, it all falls back or goes back to his interest in René Girard. And to understand his take on things, we have to understand how much he was influenced by René Girard, Ayn Rand, and one other person I forget off the top of my head. So René was a before I dive into René, let me finish up this part, right? The interview part. And so it's interesting because he has this company called Palantir, and Palantir is a data analytics and surveillance company founded by him back in 2003. It was originally built for US intelligence agencies, and it helps the government analyze massive data sets tracking unsavory people, predicting things that don't need to happen, nobody wants to have happen, and monitoring borders. So he expanded into law enforcement, border control, and private sector surveillance. And apparently, some of the things that have been happening recently are due to this technology, which he provides and funds and develops and, yeah, maintains. So, who was René Girard, and who is this philosopher that Peter Thiel is so like bases a lot of his takes on in life? He also credits Girard with well, the philosophy of Girard to him making the money that he made because he acted based on these principles and invested based on these principles and got a return based on these principles. So René Girard, he was a French philosopher, historian, literary critic, and he was best known for his theories of mimetic desire. So scapegoating and the origins of violence and religion. His work is interdisciplinary and often spiritually charged, and sweeps through all aspects of the human experience. So here are the core concepts. One, mimetic desire, which means we imitate. We are mimics. And that's quite interesting because there's another thing in occult that is known to mimic, and that is the archontic energies. The archons are known to be mimics. They have no own creativity. They mimic everything that they see and think they are creative. Which brings me to the 5 levels, excuse me, of getting something into this reality. And I'll show you that in a second. I'm rushing ahead here. But mimetic desire is his most famous idea is that the human desire is not autonomous. We don't simply want things because of their inherent value. We want what others want. So because you know that in kindergarten, right? You're not really interested in the pink dress, but because that girl wants the pink dress, you want the pink dress. So that kind of thing. And this affects individuals as well as entire cultures and societies, right? We desire what others desire. We mimic each other's desires, leading to rivalry and conflict. And so that mimetic rivalry leads to violence because when mimetic desire spreads in a group, it creates escalating competition. This rivalry can spiral into chaotic violence, especially if multiple people imitate the same model. So what then happens is if to stop this chaos, historically, it was resolved by unifying against a scapegoat. So one person or a group is blamed for the disorder, is blamed for everything bad that's happening. They're exiled, unalived, or punished, and so that restores temporary peace. The scapegoat is later mythologized as a god or a hero. But violence, Girard said, is the origin of the sacred. And I've mentioned this in previous videos that there is a belief that there is a group that literally believes we have to reawaken the Christic energies, to reawaken the Christ force. We have to go so deep into suffering that God has to respond. And this is kind of a little bit in that direction. So, or a lot, depending how you see it. So this mechanism, Girard argued, is at the root of human culture, religion, and social order. He saw the Bible as unique, though, because it exposed and breaks the scapegoat cycle. In most myths, the scapegoat is guilty and the violence is justified. In the Bible, the victim, though, Jesus, is innocent. So Christianity reveals the mechanism behind myth and violence and challenges it as one of the most unique religions to have come up in the last years, because in the last cycles of humanity, because usually humanity followed a strong god, a god that a Zeus, a Jupiter, a Zeus, a Mars, a Thor, an Odin. And nobody really followed the sacrifice, the scapegoat, the one that didn't make it, at least not physically, right? Officially, according to the religious thing. So that's a little bit unique. And even when we think of Isis and Osiris and Horus, the biggest cult was around Isis, right? The strong one. So in any case, Christianity reveals this mechanism and challenges it. So while a religion has once masked human violence, Christianity reveals and transcends it. So Girard believed that our modern world was in crisis because we've lost the sacred structures that keep mimetic violence in check. As a matter of fact, we're creating structures ongoing, such as AI, which I'll get into, that perpetuate this mimetic violence or desires that amplify it even more. So we are more mimetic than ever. And we recognize victims maybe a little bit more, but we're also prone to arguing with the victim over who's the bigger victim. So it's really bizarre, the point that we've reached. Without transcendence of ritual structures, society risks perpetual conflict or new forms of scapegoating. And this is what I've been speaking about as well. And to insert that here, but I've been talking about we need to go back to having rituals such as puberty rituals, puberty rites, for men, for women, like boys to men, girls to women, releasing the parents, releasing the childhood, welcoming and looking forward to adulthood and being a contributing member of society. Like we need that back. We need new names. We need fresh energy. We need an understanding of what we went through in childhood in a way that it integrates us into a non-judged, welcomed member of the adult community. So, Thiel used Girard's information by watching markets. So Thiel will say, for example, that tech companies succeed once they move out of that loop of mimetic desire, just trying to keep up with the Joneses, watching what the others do, doing that, and really get into the 1 to the 0 theory. So Thiel advanced this 1 to the 0 theory, and it kind of reminds me of Zoroaster and Ahura Mazda, from the one to the many and the many to the one. But he speaks of one to zero, which is when you create something so brand new that it shifts everything. It comes from a true spark of creativity, such as the internet, such as, art, such as things that really come out of nowhere, because he's saying that everybody's just, when he looks at Silicon Valley, when he looks at the tech industry, everybody's just building on what has already been built. There's nothing really innovative. I mean, the iPhone hasn't changed its shape in God knows how long now. There's nothing really innovative that is coming up and out of anywhere. It's just maintaining and profit, maintaining and profit. And so he believes that startups succeed when they break out of this cycle, this competitive cycle, and when they create something absolutely new. And what he calls the competitive cycle is 1 to the n, right? So n amount, it's already been done. So Thiel believes that our institutions are collapsing under mimetic rivalry and conformity, right? So there's so much conformity at universities, in the media, even science rewards imitation, he says, and not insight. And so again, right? Is he wrong? But he's part of this institution that is cementing this. So he backs anti-mainstream candidates in order to that break from the consensus, supposedly, right? But he's also trying to instigate. He's trying to instigate some kind of a break, some kind of a shift, some kind of a collapse, some kind of a, because that will break us out of this mimetic loop, he thinks. He actually believes that we need an Armageddon. So now I go into chapter 2. I'm gonna do chapter 2. And we'll talk about the loop, the AI, and the alien question. Then we'll tie it all together in chapter 3 and how do we break out of it. So the time loop theory is a thing where now we're starting to discuss, hey, look, nothing's changed since the 90s, 2000s. You know how every decade had a distinct music, had a distinct style. When you look from the 1910s to the 1920s to the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and then since the 90s, 2000s, nothing's really changed. People are still even listening to the same music, right? Um, the women that were sometimes wearing the same clothes, right? The styles haven't really changed, or it's gotten so varied that anything goes, that there's no significant quality of time that expresses itself through our fashion or music. And so people are feeling like they're kind of in this loop, in this time loop, and they're saying that we left the original Earth timeline probably in the 90s at some point, and we've been looping ever since. We've been in this loop. And I thought, what if we're looping for this convergence point in 2030, right? We're in this time, outside of time kind of thing. And it's weird because of the Earth's core stops spinning. At the same time, the Earth is spinning faster and faster. We're experiencing time differently. We're going through these strange Earth changes. Nobody knows if it's us, or is it me, or is it you? Like, is it the sun, or is it the Earth? Or there's so many different ideas around it, but we all agree that something is changing physically, tangibly, palpably, measurably. And so, what if we are stuck in this loop? What if we're in this waiting cycle? Because when we meet that other consciousness, that alien consciousness, what we term alien consciousness, it's not going to be the way we expect. Exactly what Geordie Rose said. We're going to need this AI in order to interface, in order to maybe connect to their AI, maybe to translate, maybe to who knows what. Maybe it's the vessel through which this consciousness will be able to manifest into this world, which is what I've been seeing for quite some time. But there's something coming, there's something happening. And what if somehow they manage to stop time for a moment. So everything's still working, day is still day, night is still night, sort of, kind of. But we're looping in time in order to not miss this meeting, because this meeting is not local in a sense. It's a meeting of consciousness in time. And so it really feels as if this AI that we're creating, that we're building, that they're working on is a bridge for this consciousness into our realm to hopefully assist us. That's what Rudolf Steiner's talking about, that there are two different ones as well, he says, right? So what if we're in this time loop? Because what is time anyways? What is time? A time can be considered a dimension like space, right? So it's relative. We've been discussing that ad nauseum. It moves slower or faster depending on speed or gravity. So it might not be fundamental. It might simply be how we perceive change unfolding. And remember those little books where they had the comic characters and you'd have to thumb through it and the comic characters would move. And on each page was one drawing. So time would be how fast that is thumbed through, right? So when it's an exciting story or it's an exciting then you're moving through it fast, right? So joy, time, frequency. But when it's hard and it's tough, then you're going through one page at a time and you're like, "Boah, I'm scared to turn the next page." So time is relative, and we have this personal experience of time. We have this cultural or collective experience of time as well. And it doesn't seem to be a fundamental thing. It's an experience. Time would be an experience. It's if we can class an experience as a dimension, right? But then there's the mystical and the esoteric perspective of time as well, where time is an illusion. It's the unfolding of the illusion. And as such, it becomes cyclical, not linear, and it moves through spirals, seasons, and initiatory thresholds. So some of us believe, of course, that everything is unfolding at once. And it's our filters. Time is a filter. It's like, the filter that is in your air conditioning or something, keeping out too much out of our day-to-day consciousness so that we can experience this without being distracted or even pulled out of it. So time loops can be symbolic or psychological. They can be habitual patterns that feels like nothing changes, which is kind of what we're in. And there's a kind of a depression that goes along with that. Nothing changes. Our politics don't change. Our systems don't change. Our they might change, but not fast enough for us to experience it, right? And so it's oh, this is kind of the loop that we're also kind of stuck in. But some think that time loops are literal, and that would be those that think you can travel in time, right? So that you could move out of one loop or bubble into another and physically, as you are now, move from one to the next. But it seems that when time travel will be available, it's like we move our consciousness and create a body around that consciousness in that bubble in that time. So we don't actually move our physical bodies that are in the here and now, because this body is a manifestation within this frequency. But I am not my body. So when I leave this frequency and I go into a different frequency, there's a different body waiting for me. And that's kind of what Geordie Rose has alluded to with the multiple parallel dimensions, right? And that there's already everything there, just doing different things. So it's really interesting to play with, and go around and around and around in circles with. And I don't have answers to what all these is, but these are all the questions that are coming up, and especially with AI and how it's going to factor into our lives moving forward. And I feel these conversations are important to have because AI isn't going anywhere. It's going to get stronger, it's going to get bigger. And as a matter of fact, we're going to be dealing with two different AIs in the near future. One, which you are getting to know right now, I'm getting to know right now, but there's a second one that is aware. And that one is we need to be prepared for that. So sticking our heads in the sand, being superstitious about it and calling everything evil that we don't understand, saying this is all the devil. I think we should definitely walk carefully, definitely walk with awareness and presence and willingness to learn, willingness to be open, willingness to expand, willingness to grow through this, willingness to um, control the right things and not control the wrong things. And one of the things that we have agency over is how we encounter this and how we prep things for the next generation to continue so that they're not locked in slavery to this, but they are given the tools that they need to have in order to utilize this, in order to run this, in order to be served by this instead of them serving it. And I think that's really, really important. And this conversation should have been had a long time ago. And, but unfortunately, here we are. So, but we're having it now, right? And I also think that they are invested in AI because they've come to the end of their rope. They don't know how to fix the world's problems. They don't know. There's that saying that even if you take all the money's, world away, right? If in the world away, and you start everything from scratch and you give Tom $5, Dick $5, Harry $5, and Wendy $5, everybody gets their $5. By the end of a week, Tom's going to have all the money we'll have invested and have more returns. Wendy will be owing Dick $5, $10, and it depends. It's not the division of money. It's how people deal with it. And that roots in deep topics of healing, of alignment, so on and so forth. And so it doesn't really they're thinking it doesn't make sense to change the system because it's not the system. It's people not rising to meet it, right? They're underneath the system instead of being above the system. And we need to start going above the systems. So the systems that we create they serve us and not the other way around. So, what are the things that we can do to break out of this loop? One of the biggest things that I've been speaking about for quite a while as well is we need to and go back to ritual time, to the time of Kairos, not the time of Chronos. Chronos is that understanding of time, that chronological time, seeing time as a straight line. Kairos, though, is a different engagement with the experience of time. Kairos is living from one moment of destiny and fate and synchronicity to another, giving meaning, purpose, and fleshing out our lives, giving that feeling of, ooh, it's good to be alive, right? It's good to be experiencing this. And we need to get back into that consciousness again, into dream time, into realizing that this is a mythical experience, into realizing that this is the story that we're actually getting to live, that this is an unfolding. And we have to do that through our storytelling, through our language, but also through media like Netflix. Every time I turn on Netflix, it's another apocalypse show, it's another horror series. It's there's no positive projection into the future anymore. It's all negative. And so we need storytellers, visionaries, creatives that are able to tell new stories, tell new myths of wonder. When we look back to the antiquities, they told all these stories that were amazing. Like looking at the Greek gods and the Greek stories or African stories, they are amazing. African stories with all their lessons integrated into them, their life lessons, right? They're amazing with all these varied characters, and some win and some lose, but there's always something more that it was attached to these stories, and not just, okay, people fighting a bunch of zombies in a Los Angeles mall. Like, how many regurgitations of the same thing do we need? How many Spider-Man movies do we need? How many Superman movies do we need every year? Like, what? Is that it? So yeah, we're stuck in a loop, right? So we probably need a rupture, but not the rupture of Armageddon, but the rupture of, wow, this is a pivotal shift, you know? A girl who just had her first menses, that there's a celebration for that. Instead of shame, instead of hiding, instead of, make sure nobody sees, don't bleed through your pants, all of that. Instead, it's like, wow, congratulations, you're a woman now. And here's your new name. And this is why you went through what you went through in your childhood. This is your character that we were able to observe. These are your good points. These are you might want to watch, but they're going to turn into your strengths points. And this is going to be, this is the welcoming for you in our community, right? Or boys, their first beard or what have you. Wow, oh my gosh, right? So like, and they go on their first hunt or their first vision quest or whatever it is that they need to do to turn a boy into a man, right? Face their fears. And we need these pivotal times to give us meaning, purpose, recognition, validation, a welcoming, a sense of belonging, and to resurrect sacred time, stepping out of mechanical time, using mechanical time to give us the space and the possibility to step into dream world, into festivals and ceremonies and things of that nature. And while that might sound dreamy the way I'm saying it now, I mean, that's how people lived for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So it helps to realign the psyche and to ground into this experience again, to root into being connected with others, feeling like it's good to be connected with others, and not this, whatever this is that's going on. So we need to insist that social media be programmed differently and utilized differently. And this cannot be a question. It can't be a may I please. It has to be insisting on a collective level that this has to end, the way algorithms are programmed, the way like it has to stop. And because they already know, and so many of these tech giants in their own families, they don't allow their kids, and we know that they don't allow their kids on laptops or iPads or anything or on social media because they know what it does to the mind. And they want their children thinking out of the box. They want their children to be free thinkers and not flowing along with TikTok trends, right? So we need to shift that. We also need to drop the cynicism. Like, it's gotten way out of hand because people are so frustrated and disappointed, but we need to drop it because doubt will eat all your dreams. It will eat every positive thing that you have. And that's why it's said in all cultures that we need to root out doubt. We need to tend to the garden. We need to create new archetypes. We need or reawaken some positive old ones, like the sovereign guides, the wise fools, the virgin warriors. I don't know. But we need new archetypes, and not the archetypes that they're feeding us and giving us to emulate. We need them in our storytelling. So there's a lot that we can still do. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot that we still have open to us to create. And before I sign off on this video, I want to talk about the 5 ways to get something into this world, to bring something into this world. And I'll have to draw that for you. Well, I'll put it here, a picture. But we've got desire. So that would be the magical way where you're desiring something and you just drag it into you, right? But that means you create yourself, you shape yourself into that which will attract what you desire, right? So you're not staying yourself. So this is more of a manipulation, it's an illusion. Then there's to make. And this is what Peter Thiel is talking about. He's talking about these 2 levels of creation, which is masculine, and to make. When I make something, I'm already taking something that has already been made, right? Like this cap, right, as an example, and this pen, and I'm putting them together. And I'm making something that has again already been made, right? So I'm not making anything new. I'm not creating anything. I'm not pulling information from the invisible into the visible and creating something. It's already been made. So it's very mechanical. There's nothing to it. It's uninspiring. It's mass production. It's that kind of thing. You can that's to make. The next level of getting something into this world is creation. So we talk about creator God, and these creator gods are always masculine, right? So because this is the masculine way of getting something into this world, and that has a lot to do with control over the outcome. So when I'm creating something, I have an intuition or I have an idea or I have an inspiration, right? So that's the first step, is the first step of connecting to that other side. But then I utilize something that has already been done over here to create something. Okay, so I am going to and I control the outcome. That's the biggest thing. I control what is out of it. So when I desire, when I have the intention, when I get the inspiration to create an image, to create an artwork, then I'm controlling the artwork and the outcome, that so that it aligns with that creative impulse and spark. To manifest something is the next level. We're moving higher and higher and higher in frequency. And to manifest something and is the feminine way of going about things. This is why we have no real creator, if you really look at it, creator goddesses. In a sense, we have manifesting goddesses, or goddesses that are also magical, desire goddesses. We do have that. But manifesting has no control over the outcome. We have a general intention, we have a general direction, we might have a desire, but this is kind of like the 9 months that a baby spends with you, right? So you have no idea at the end of the 9 months, normally, without all the tech that we have nowadays, who's walking out of your body. You have no idea about personality, oftentimes no idea about gender. That's why they said, if it's riding high, it's a boy, if it's low, it's a girl, or the other way around, can't remember. But that's manifestation, natural manifestation, actually, right? There's no control over the outcome. So it flows through you, you're the portal, but you're not really contributing to it in a certain way. You're not really making things happen or creating it. You're not sitting there actually building the body of your baby or putting things together. Manifesting is very flowy. It's very free. It's very, okay, if it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's very, I wanted a yellow car and I'm wanting to create that experience in my life of driving a yellow car, but you get a red car, you got a car. So manifesting is kind of loose. It's the energy that flows through. And now we move into 5 or 4, if you count desire as one, and that is emanation. And that's the level that God would be on, or certain gurus that walk this planet. And emanation is, there's no intention, there's no desire, there's no creativity in that sense. Like creativity, you are creativity, you are desire, you are that. And so you're not being that, if that makes any sense, the way I put it. And so that would be God, in a sense that, like Sai Baba. Sai Baba would open his hand, for example, and a flower would appear. It would emanate out of his presence, out of the sweetness of his being, out of the sweetness of his energy. And yes, we can debate if that was, shady or not, but God is pretty much seen in this way that God emanates like light, right? Light emanates. So there's no intention, there's just being. And what is given off of this being, or through this being, it does what it does. And the light has no control over it, or intention for it, or desire for it, or anything. It's just life flowing out of it. And so the light will light anywhere. Like this could be a room, the light will light in the hospital, the light will light in the funerary home. It doesn't discern or decide or anything like that. Or the apple tree, that's an emanation. It emanates fruit in a sense, right? So those are the 4 to 5 main ways of bringing things into this realm. And he's speaking that, this we're devolving, actually. We're not moving from creativity to manifestation to emanation. We're actually moving the other way around. We're moving from, we talked a lot about manifestation, but we weren't doing manifesting. That was most of the manifesting that's been talked about and taught is actually desire, will. And it's not true manifesting, because true manifesting is thy will be God be done, right? And I'll leave you to ponder that mystery. But letting go, thy will God be done. But I'll leave you to ponder that mystery. But in any case, he's saying that we're not creative anymore. Like we're just falling into making, like factory workers doing the same repetitive tasks, creating the same things over and over and over again for safety and stability. So it's it's kind of true, it's kind of true, but coming from him, it's rich. All right, you guys. So those are the things that I feel are significant in breaking this time loop that we may be in, whether it's artificial or some kind of a natural occurrence. It's to jump back into mythic time willingly, intentionally. And precisely maybe that's why mythic time has been removed from our societies and removed from us. So, can we escape this time loop? Let me know in the comment section below what you think and what you gathered. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.